Hello everybody, welcome to the Cloudkitty project update. Just for the record, before we start, who here has played with Cloudkitty or tried it or is running it? Okay, great. So let's start with a quick introduction to the project. So what is Cloudkitty? Cloudkitty is the official rating and chargeback component for OpenStack. So what we do is we allow users to define rating rules based on metadata or a quantity of a collected measure. And we apply these rating rules, store the collected data, and allow users to retrieve and get the feedback on the rated data and generate reports for the customers. However, we do not do billing, which means you can't do taxes with Cloudkitty, you can't convert between currencies, etc. So that must be done with rating software, billing software. We apply a price based on what you describe. We are compatible with Gnocchi, Monasca, and Prometheus, and it is possible to use Cloudkitty outside of OpenStack since the Queen's release, which has been released a year ago. This has changed the project in many aspects. Before the Queen's release, Cloudkitty was basing itself on resources, on OpenStack resources like glance images, Nova instances, Cinder volume, or Swift objects. But we wanted to allow users to do more, to make Cloudkitty a more generic solution. So we went from a resource approach to a more time series and metrics-based approach. You will see later why that's important. We've been integrated with Grafana since the latest release. I'll describe later how this works. So this is a simplified schema of Cloudkitty's architecture. Green components are modular components, which work with drivers, so there are several of them which can be used. Basically, the processor, which is the most important part of the project, will collect metrics, measures, resources from a given data source, so Gnocchi, Prometheus, or Monasca. We'll pass these measures to the rating model. So at the moment we have 2 rating models, but you can write your own rating model to suit your needs. It's also possible to push custom Python scripts into Cloudkitty to process the data you collect. And once the data is rated by the rating model, everything is pushed to the storage backend. The fetcher you can see here is a part of Cloudkitty who is responsible to, who determines what data should be processed and which should be not. We retrieve what we call scopes. So in an OpenStack context, a project was the scope. So rating data was divided by projects. Since the Queen's release and the standalone mode, it is possible to have other scopes. So you could rate based on a domain basis or a user basis or pretty much anything. Traditionally, we had what we call the keystone fetcher, which will retrieve the list of projects on which Cloudkitty has the rating role and collect data and rate only these projects. You'll see later why this has changed recently. Just a note, if you want to rate metrics or data that is in the storage backend or in a database that isn't in Cloudkitty's supported drivers, you can easily implement your own. What you basically have to do is fetch the data for a given period with some information which Cloudkitty will provide you, and push the information back in the given format, and the rating, etc., will be made by Cloudkitty. About the features which happened in Stein, it is now possible to do scope discovery with Gnocchi. We realized that most people who were using Cloudkitty just made a script to give Cloudkitty the rating role on all projects because they always wanted to rate all projects. So what this new feature does is when you retrieve data from Gnocchi, which is the only way with official OpenStack telemetry projects, the fetcher will just discover which tenants do have data and what data is available. So you don't have to specify manually, I want to rate this and this project. The change, so switching from a resource-based approach to a more generic metric and time series-based approach, well, we felt the need to redesign the storage backend. So we created a V2 storage interface, which will support new backends. For now, the only V2 storage backend that is available is InfluxDB, which allows you to integrate easily with Grafana and create, well, more visual charts for your users and, well, a better representation of the available data. We also did some improvements on the Prometheus fetcher. So, well, there are a lot more possible Prometheus setups. We support authentication, custom CA certificates, etc. The Horizon dashboard has been improved a bit. It's mostly under the hood modifications. So we don't ship our own static JavaScript files like OpenStack UIs did in the past, but rather depend on ecstatic packages. What the changes for operators is the installation is more flawless. Like it's easier to manage, and you have uniform, well, consistent JavaScript dependency management between all Horizon plugins. The documentation has been refactored, so the layout is completely new, and a lot of new sections have been added. Most importantly, in the developer documentation. So if you wish to implement your own driver for a new storage backend or to collect data from a new data source, well, there is documentation to do that now. And with the new storage driver comes a new API. So we need a new way for users to, well, get the data out of Cloudkitty now that they can do more than just OpenStack. So we implemented a V2 API framework, which allows to easily create your own endpoint and add it to the API and, well, do what you want to do. I'll get to the V2 API more in detail later. So what's upcoming for Train? Well, in the same way Gnocchi can now discover which scopes should be rated, Prometheus will also be available to discover well, what should be rated. For example, with Kubernetes namespaces or hosts on which Prometheus is running, well, these will also be dynamically discoverable. This is actually merged upstream, so if you want to try it out, it's possible. It can be easily backported. V2 API endpoints for summary. So summary is basically how much did my cloud cost for this period, grouped by user, project, anything, and filter on this and this. For example, which give me the price for the last week, for this and this and this user, and group the total for each resource type that's available in my cloud. So I want to know how much Mandela shares and instances have cost for my top 10 customers, for example. Reports will now be generated through the API, and they have historically been made with Cloudkitty CLI tool, which had to be run against the storage backend directly. So this will be done through the API now, so it's easier for users to get a report out of the API. Second, V2 storage backend will be added for people who do not wish to use InfluxDB. The backend has still to be decided yet, but for now it will probably be Elasticsearch. However, this is open to discussion. If people want to suggest something, we will have the onboarding in 20 minutes. So, well, if you want to talk about this, you're welcome. And we focus on the community. We force the usage of specs now. So if you want to know what's coming on with more details, there are a lot of specs available upstream. The documentation has been refactored. We run IRC meetings again, and we are more active on the IRC channel. So if you want to interact with us, we are available. For what's coming beyond Train, well, for the next few releases, V1 and V2 API will run together. But on the long term, we would like to port all V1 endpoints to the V2 API. It can be done in a single release because we lack developers, but it will definitely be done to ease the usage of Cloudkitty. We also want to implement a new rating model. There are several reasons for this. The first one is, well, since we do now support more than OpenStack, we need a rating model that is not OpenStack-centric, so which allows to do more to describe rating rules with more precision. And it turns out the current model is not as intuitive as we wish it was. So again, creating the new rating model will take time, mostly because the design is something we want to think about and most of all get user feedback. A lot of people have different visions of what a rating model should and should not do and how to describe your rating rules. So again, this will be discussed during the onboarding session if you're interested in that. And we will still focus on the community. We'll keep on with IRC meetings. We will put a lot of effort into the documentation, and specs are now mandatory for each new feature. So you will know what's going on with the project, and we try to be available for feedback, and yes. We need your help. So if you want to contribute, we need your feedback. Contributing is not necessarily pushing new features. We need your feedback. We need your opinion on what's a good rating model, what you want to do with rating rules, what would make the documentation easier for you to read, because documentation written by maintainers is not necessarily the most easy documentation to understand for new users. And well, if you have a feature request or thing you would like to contribute, which you have done on your side or you plan to do, well, we'd love to discuss with you during the onboarding. So if you wish to give feedback or to contribute, we are on IRC, on the Cloudkitty channel, on Freenode. The onboarding session is, I believe, in the next room at 2:30 p.m. We have a hands-on session if you want to play around with Cloudkitty with our help at 4:20 p.m. in 4D, so that's downstairs next to the meeting place, to the marketplace. And well, there are the storyboard stories, which are, well, where you can report bugs or follow how the new features are going on, etc. This is my personal email address at the job. And we also have a Cloudkitty at Objectif Libre email address in case you want to reach out to the whole Cloudkitty team. So, well. Do you have questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
Any thoughts on, like, I'm running an internal cloud, so we don't charge, but, maybe excessive usage or, something that, any features around that plan that, we can go back if we see somebody who's spun up way too many VMs or something, we could get, report on that.
So for the record, the question was for internal usage, how to get feedback and reports on people using too much, so for internal usage. Well, with Grafana integration, there is a way to create alerts, and with the charts, you have time usage, so you will notice spikes, or if you group a user, you will notice if one user or one tenant is really above the others, and the limit you planned. We'll see how to create charts and everything in the hands-on session, if you want. No other question? Thank you very much, and I hope to see you during the onboarding session or at the hands-on workshop.